He's just an old rancher. A bachelor with nothing but calloused hands and a silent house. You can't possibly be considering him for two newborn infants. It's not just irresponsible, it's preposterous. The words from the town council liaison, a woman named Agnes Gable, echoed with brittle certainty in the small church basement. The small crowd of townspeople, gathered after the sparse burial of a young woman who had drifted into their community and then out of life, shifted uncomfortably. They looked at the floor, at their folded hands, anywhere but at the man standing near the door. He was a silhouette of worn denim and quiet stillness, a man named Silas who seemed carved from the very wind-worn plains he worked. He offered no defense, no reaction at all to the public dismissal. His gaze was fixed on the twin wicker baskets on a long folding table, where two small, swaddled forms slept, oblivious to the debate that sealed their fate. But the town doctor, a man who had seen more seasons than most, watched Silas. He saw the way the old rancher stood, not slumped with age, but rooted, balanced, a posture of quiet readiness. He saw a man not empty of feeling, but one who contained it. If you believe that true strength is measured not in words, but in unwavering action, type competence below. The liaison continued her campaign of doubt, her voice rising with the self-assurance of someone who mistakes bureaucracy for wisdom. They need a proper home, a family structure. A mother. Look at him. His world is barbed wire and livestock. What does he know of colic? Of fevers in the night? Of the thousand fragile needs of a human child? He will be overwhelmed before the first night is over. This is a matter for the state, for professionals who understand these things, not for a sentimental whim from a man who hasn't had a visitor in a decade. Around the room, heads nodded in reluctant agreement. Her logic seemed sound, her assumptions unassailable. The picture she painted was one of inevitable failure, of well-meaning but catastrophic incompetence. Silas remained silent through it all, a stone against which the waves of her rhetoric crashed and broke. He simply waited for her to finish, his patience as vast and unhurried as the sky above his ranch. When a heavy silence finally fell, he took 3 measured steps forward. His voice, when it came, was low and raspy from disuse, yet it carried with the weight of absolute finality. "I'll take them." The declaration was not a request. It was a statement of fact, a quiet claiming that defied all the noise and doubt that had filled the room, and in that moment, the true challenge began. The town watched, expecting a swift and predictable collapse. They envisioned a frantic, exhausted old man, a house in chaos, the inevitable phone call for help. But the call never came. Instead, a new kind of silence descended upon the Blackwood Ranch, a silence not of emptiness, but of profound, focused purpose. Light from his window burned long before the dawn and well after dusk. The first week was a crucible. The twins, a boy and a girl, seemed to conspire in their needs, one waking the moment the other fell asleep. But Silas moved between them not with panic, but with a strange and steady grace. His large, rough hands, the same hands that could pull a calf from its mother or mend a fence in a blizzard, proved impossibly gentle. He learned the precise temperature of milk on his wrist, the subtle rhythm of a swaddle that calmed a cry. He moved with a methodical efficiency that was mesmerizing. There was a practiced economy to every motion, a quiet competence that turned the chaotic task of caring for 2 infants into a seamless, rhythmic dance. The rhythmic creak of the old rocking chair he'd placed between their cribs became the new heartbeat of the house, a testament to a resolve the town had completely failed to recognize. A month later, the test escalated. A bitter north wind swept down from the mountains, burying the county in 3 feet of snow and ice. The power lines snapped, the roads became impassable, and the town was completely isolated. Panic rippled through the community, but the greatest fear was for the twins, stranded out on the plains with the old man everyone had already condemned to fail. Agnes Gable organized frantic calls, demanding the sheriff dispatch a snowplow, her voice ringing with a mixture of genuine concern and a grim sense of vindication. "I told you this would happen," she declared to anyone who would listen. "He's trapped. Those poor babies." But out at the ranch, there was no panic. The wood-burning stove, its flue clean and its woodpile high, glowed with steady warmth. One of the twins, the little girl, had developed a cough and a rising fever. Silas didn't hesitate. He bundled her close, using the heat from his own body to keep her warm. He crushed a bit of wild mint from his pantry, steeping it in warm water, a remedy his own grandmother had taught him. He spent the entire night awake in the rocking chair, humming a low, tuneless song, feeling the rise and fall of her small chest against his own. He was not a man waiting for rescue. He was a fortress. When Doc Hemlock finally made it through on a tractor 2 days later, the first man to breach the isolation, he expected to find a scene of desperation. He braced himself for a freezing house, for crying, sick infants, for an old man at the end of his rope. Instead, he opened the door to a pocket of profound peace. The cabin was warm and smelled of wood smoke and baby powder. The baby boy was sleeping soundly in his crib. In the old rocking chair sat Silas, the little girl asleep on his chest, her breathing now even and clear, her fever broken. A row of clean bottles stood on a shelf, ready for the next feeding. The scene was one of absolute order, of a crisis met and conquered with a calm that bordered on holy. Doc Hemlock slowly took off his hat, his eyes taking in the evidence of a skill far deeper than anyone had understood. Agnes Gable, who had ridden along, stood speechless in the doorway, her face a mask of stunned disbelief. The reality before her was a direct and silent refutation of every loud assumption she had made. It wasn't possible, and yet it was. Doc Hemlock walked over and placed a hand gently on the sleeping girl's forehead. It was cool to the touch. He looked at Silas, his eyes filled with a respect that ran deeper than words. He turned to the small group of men who had come with him, and to Agnes, who still hadn't moved. "You were all so worried," he said, his voice quiet but carrying the authority of a lifetime spent witnessing the truth of people. He walked over to a dusty bookshelf and pulled down a small, leather-bound photo album that had sat untouched for 30 years. He opened it on the kitchen table. Inside were pictures of a younger Silas, smiling, standing next to a beautiful young woman with bright eyes. In the last photo, she was holding a small, swaddled bundle. 30 years ago, the doctor began, his voice dropping. Silas and his wife, Sarah, were expecting their first child. There were complications. We lost them both, the baby and the mother. The room fell into a deafening silence. The man you see here, he pointed a finger at Silas, isn't just some lonely bachelor. He's a husband who never stopped loving his wife, and a father who never got to raise his child. The reveal settled over them, heavy and irrefutable. The doctor closed the album softly. "You looked at his hands and saw a rancher," he said, his gaze landing squarely on Agnes. "I see the hands that built a nursery in that back room, a room that has stood empty for 3 decades, waiting. You heard the silence in his house and called it emptiness. But it was never empty. It was full of memory, full of a promise he made to a woman he loved. The competence you see here, the reason these children are safe and warm while the whole town was in a panic, isn't something he just learned. It's a love that has been waiting 30 years for a place to land. You judge the life he lives, but you never once asked about the life he lost." The shame on Agnes's face was profound. She looked from the photo album to the steady, quiet man in the chair, holding a child that was not his by blood, but was now his by every measure that mattered. In that moment, the town didn't see an old bachelor. They saw a guardian, a professional of the heart. The story of what Doc Hemlock found at the Blackwood Ranch spread not like wildfire, but like the slow, steady warmth of the morning sun. It changed things. The town's perception of Silas shifted from pity and doubt to a deep, quiet reverence. The change was not in loud apologies, but in small, meaningful actions. One morning, Silas found a stack of firewood on his porch, neatly cut and piled. Another day, a basket of fresh vegetables and jars of canned preserves appeared. The owner of the general store started a tab for him, waving off any attempt at payment for diapers or formula with a simple, "It's on the town." Agnes Gable's transformation was the most telling. One afternoon, she drove out to the ranch herself. She didn't stay long. She simply walked up to the porch and left a large, hand-stitched quilt and a box filled with soft, knitted baby clothes. Silas saw her from the window. He met her at the door, and she couldn't quite meet his eyes. She started, then trailed off. Silas just nodded once, a gesture of acceptance that needed no further words. He had not sought their approval, but now that he had it, He accepted it with the same quiet grace with which he accepted everything else. Years passed. The silence of the Blackwood Ranch was permanently broken, replaced by the sound of children's laughter echoing across the plains. The twins, a boy named Caleb and a girl named Sarah, grew strong and bright under Silas's steady care. They were his shadow, learning the rhythm of the land not through lessons, but through osmosis. They knew how to read the clouds, how to soothe a nervous horse, how to live with a quiet respect for the world around them. Silas taught them not with lectures, but with his hands, with his patience, with his unwavering presence. The story of their arrival, and of his silent vow, became a piece of local folklore, a lesson told to newcomers about the danger of assumptions. The rocking chair where he'd spent that first stormy night was now a landmark in the house, a symbol of his defiant competence. The legend of the quiet rancher was no longer about the man he had lost, but about the family he had built from the ashes of tragedy, a testament to the fact that the most powerful legacies are often forged in silence, proven through action, and earned through a respect that is never demanded. The world often celebrates the loudest voice in the room, mistaking confidence for competence and arrogance for strength. It is quick to judge the quiet, the unassuming, the one who does not boast of their qualifications. But true worth is not declared, it is demonstrated. It is proven in the crucible of a crisis, in the steady hand that does not tremble when all others do, in the quiet professional who completes the mission without needing an audience. Silas Blackwood never asked for validation. He never explained his past or justified his actions. He simply did the work. His legacy wasn't written in a file or etched on a plaque. It was written in the healthy laughter of two children who had been given a future, in the humbled wisdom of a town that learned to look deeper, and in the enduring truth that the strongest foundations are often the ones laid in silence, built by hands that know the immense value of what they are protecting. For more stories where quiet competence triumphs over loud assumption and where steadfast character defines their worth, subscribe to Unknown Heroine Stories.